Chapter 1. The Vanishing Act. The morning mist clung to St. Mary Mead like a shroud, softening the edges of the village's quaint cottages. Marple Manor, perched at the edge of the green, stood as it always had, stately, ivy-clad and whispering of secrets. Inside, Miss Jane Marple sipped her tea, her sharp eyes scanning the Morning Post. The fire crackled, and all seemed as it should be, until it wasn't. Miss Marple! Oh, heavens, Miss Marple! The cry shattered the quiet, shrill and panicked. It was Mrs. Hattie, the housekeeper, her round face pale as she stumbled into the parlour. Her apron twisted in her hands, and her eyes darted as if expecting the walls to betray her. "Goodness, Hattie, whatever is the matter?" Miss Marple set her teacup down, her voice calm, but her gaze already probing. It's gone, ma'am. The chamber, your private study, it's gone." Hattie's voice cracked, and she wrung her apron tighter. Miss Marple's brow furrowed, though her composure held. "Gone? A room doesn't simply vanish, Hattie. Show me." The two women hurried down the manor's oak-panelled corridor, their footsteps echoing. The air grew cooler as they approached the west wing, where Miss Marple's study, a small book-lined sanctuary, had always stood. Hattie stopped before a blank wall, its plaster unmarred, its surface smooth as if no door had ever existed. "Here," Hattie whispered, pointing at the wall. "The door was here yesterday, I swear it." Miss Marple stepped closer, her fingers brushing the plaster. No seam, no hinge, no trace of the oak door that had opened to her study for decades. Beyond this wall should have been her desk, her leather armchair, the window overlooking the rose garden. She tapped the wall lightly, the sound dull and solid. "Remarkable," she murmured, her mind already turning. "And you noticed this when?" "Just now, ma'am, when I went to dust. I thought I'd taken a wrong turn, but—" Hattie's voice trailed off, her eyes wide. "It's not possible, is it?" Miss Marple's lips twitched, not quite a smile. "Possible or not, it's happened. Tell me, Hattie, who was in the manor last night?" Hattie hesitated, then rattled off names. "Just the usual, ma'am. Me, cook, and young Tom, the grounds boy. Oh, and the guests, Mr. and Mrs. Vane, that writer fellow, Mr. Quill, and the lady from London, Miss Cresswell. They're all still here, I reckon." "Guests," Miss Marple repeated softly, her eyes narrowing. "And did anyone linger in this corridor? Not that I saw, but—" Hattie lowered her voice. "Mr. Quill was up late, pacing. I heard him muttering about secrets in old houses. Gave me the shivers." Miss Marple nodded, filing the detail away. She turned back, to the wall, her fingers tracing its surface once more. A faint draught brushed her knuckles, so subtle it might have been imagination. But Miss Marple did not believe in imagination without cause. "Hattie, fetch my magnifying glass from the drawing-room, and tell no one, not yet." As Hattie scurried off, Miss Marple stood alone, the blank wall looming before her. A room did not vanish without reason, nor without effort. Someone, or something, had orchestrated this impossibility. and in St. Mary Mead, where secrets grew like weeds, Miss Marple knew one thing for certain. The truth was never far from the surface, if one knew where to look. She stepped back, her eyes glinting. "A vanishing chamber," she said to the empty corridor. "How very theatrical." Chapter 2. The Curious Guests. The dining room of Marple Manor glowed under the chandelier's soft light, its long mahogany table set with breakfast. The aroma of fresh scones and coffee mingled with an undercurrent of tension. Miss Marple sat at the head, her hands folded neatly, her eyes flitting from face to face. The guests, unaware of the vanished chamber, chatted with forced ease, their voices betraying flickers of unease. Mr. Harold Vane, a portly man with a walrus moustache, buttered his toast with vigour. Splendid manner, Miss Marple, full of character, though I dare say these old piles always have their quirks, eh? His wife, Clara Vane, a pinched woman in a high-necked dress, nodded absently, her gaze fixed on her teacup. "Quirks, indeed," said Mr. Quentin Quill, the writer, leaning back in his chair. His sharp features and ink-stained fingers gave him a vulture-like air. "Old houses like this are riddled with stories. Hidden passages, cursed rooms." He paused, smirking. "I'm half tempted to write one myself." Miss Marple's smile was polite, but her eyes lingered on Quill. "Stories often begin with a grain of truth, Mr. Quill. Have you found any inspiration here?" Quill's smirk faltered, and he sipped his coffee. "Not yet, but I'm observant. Things reveal themselves." Across the table, Miss Evelyn Cresswell, the Londoner, stirred her tea with a silver spoon. Her sleek bob and emerald earrings marked her as out of place in St. Mary Mead's rustic charm. "I find old houses dreadfully draughty," she said, her voice crisp. "All those creaks and groans keeps one up at night. Did you hear anything unusual last night, Miss Cresswell?" Miss Marple asked, her tone mild as milk. Evelyn's spoon paused mid-stir. "Nothing specific, just noises. Old houses, as I said." She met Miss Marple's gaze briefly, then looked away. Mrs. Hattie bustled in, carrying a tray of jam. Miss Marple caught her eye, and the housekeeper gave a subtle nod. Her task was done. The magnifying glass awaited in the parlour, and no one had been told of the vanished room. For now, secrecy was Miss Marple's ally. As breakfast continued, Miss Marple studied her guests. Harold Vane's joviality felt forced, his laughter too loud. Clara Vane's silence was heavy, her fingers twisting a napkin. Quentin Quill's eyes darted, as if cataloguing every word. And Evelyn Cresswell's poise was a mask, her movements too precise. Each carried a secret, Miss Marple was certain, and one of those secrets had erased a room. "Miss Marple," Harold Vane said, breaking her thoughts, "you've lived here ages. Ever come across anything odd? Ghostly happenings, perhaps?" His tone was teasing, but his eyes were keen. "Oh, I don't believe in ghosts, Mr. Vane," Miss Marple replied, her voice light. "But I do believe in people, and people can be far more intriguing than spectres." Clara Vane coughed, a sharp sound. Quill raised an eyebrow. Evelyn's spoon clinked against her cup. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. Miss Marple rose, smoothing her skirt. "Do excuse me. I've a small matter to attend to. Enjoy your breakfast." As she left, she heard Quill murmur to Evelyn, "She's sharper than she looks, that bun." Evelyn's reply was too soft to catch, but her laughter was brittle. In the parlour, Miss Marple retrieved her magnifying glass and returned to the blank wall in the west wing. Kneeling, she examined the base where the draught had brushed her earlier. There, barely visible, was a hairline crack, no wider than a thread. She pressed her finger to it, and a faint click echoed deep within the wall. "Curious," she whispered, her heart quickening. "Very curious indeed." Chapter 3. Whispers in the Walls. The west wing of Marple Manor was silent, save for the faint creak of floorboards under Miss Marple's careful steps. The blank wall loomed before her, its plaster facade as unyielding as ever. Yet the hairline crack at its base, revealed by her magnifying glass, hummed with possibility. She knelt again, her fingers tracing the fissure. The click she'd heard earlier had been no accident. Something lay hidden, and Miss Marple was not one to leave secrets buried. She pressed the crack gently, then harder. Nothing. Frowning, she scanned the surrounding wall, her eyes catching on a sconce nearby, its brass tarnished but oddly askew. She reached up, twisting it. A low groan rumbled behind the plaster, and a faint puff of dust escaped the crack. Miss Marple stepped back, her pulse quickening. The wall didn't move, but the sound was unmistakable. Machinery, old and reluctant, stirring within. "Intriguing," she murmured, jotting a note in her small pocketbook. "A wall that speaks, but not yet ready to confess." Footsteps interrupted her thoughts, light, hesitant, approaching from the corridor. Miss Marple slipped the magnifying glass into her sleeve and turned just as Clara Vane appeared, her face pale, her hands clasped tightly. "Oh, Miss Marple, I didn't expect—" Clara's voice faltered, her eyes flicking to the wall. "I was just looking for the library." "The library is in the east wing, Mrs. Vane," Miss Marple said, her tone gentle, but her gaze sharp. "This is an odd place to wander." Clara's lips parted, then closed. I must have gotten turned around. This house is a maze." She laughed, a brittle sound, and tugged at her shawl. "Have you always had this wall here? It seems out of place." Miss Marple tilted her head. "Walls are rarely out of place in old houses, Mrs. Vane, though they can hide surprises. Have you noticed anything unusual during your stay?" Clara's eyes widened, and for a moment Miss Marple thought she might speak. But then Clara shook her head. "No, nothing. Just the usual creaks. I should go." She turned abruptly, her footsteps fading quickly. Miss Marple watched her go, her mind turning. Clara's nervousness was no mere shyness. She knew something, or feared something. But what? Returning to the wall, Miss Marple hesitated. The sconce's mechanism suggested a hidden panel, but forcing it risked alerting whoever had engineered this vanishing act. Instead, she pressed her ear to the plaster, listening. At first, there was nothing. Then, faint as a breath, came a whisper, not words, but a low rhythmic hum, like air moving through a distant passage. She stepped back, her eyes narrowing. Not just a room, she said softly, a secret that breathes. Later, in the drawing-room, Miss Marple gathered the guests under the guise of afternoon tea. The fire crackled, but the mood was strained. Harold Vane recounted a tedious hunting story, while Quentin Quill scribbled in a notebook, his pen scratching loudly. Evelyn Cresswell sat poised, her smile tight, and Clara Vane stared at her teacup, her hands trembling slightly. Such a charming manner, Miss Marple said, pouring tea, though I confess I've grown fond of its peculiarities. Have any of you explored the West Wing? It's quite old, full of history. Quill's pen paused. The West Wing? Dusty, isn't it? I prefer the library. More stories there. I glanced down that way, Evelyn said, her voice smooth. Nothing but corridors and cobwebs. Why do you ask? Oh, no reason, Miss Marple said, her eyes twinkling. Old houses have a way of surprising us, don't they? Harold Vane chuckled. Surprises? Like what? Secret doors? You've been reading too many novels, Miss Marple. Clara's cup clattered against its saucer, and all eyes turned to her. I'm fine, she stammered, her face flushing. Just clumsy. Miss Marple smiled, but her mind was elsewhere. The hum, the crack, the sconce, clues that pointed to a mechanism and a purpose. Someone had made a room vanish, and someone in this room knew why. The whispers in the walls were growing louder, and Miss Marple intended to hear them clearly. Chapter 4. The Locked Diary. The afternoon light filtered through Marple Manor's tall windows, casting long shadows across the parlour. Miss Marple sat alone, her knitting needles clicking rhythmically, though her mind was far from the scarf taking shape. The hum from the wall, Clara Vane's trembling hands, the guests' guarded glances. The pieces of the puzzle were multiplying, but the picture remained elusive. She needed a new thread to pull. Rising, she made her way to the attic, a cluttered maze of trunks and forgotten relics. The vanished chamber was a modern mystery, but old houses kept old secrets, and Miss Marple had a hunch the attic might hold answers. She moved carefully, her flashlight beam dancing over cobwebbed crates, until her eyes caught on a small, locked chest tucked beneath a moth-eaten rug. Its brass clasp was tarnished, but the lock gleamed, as if recently oiled. Curious, she murmured, kneeling. The chest was heavy, its wood carved with faint initials. E.M. Eleanor Marple, her great-aunt, who'd built the manor a century ago. Miss Marple's fingers brushed the lock, and a faint memory stirred. A key, hidden in the base of a music box in her bedroom. She retrieved the key, its silver glinting as it slid into the lock. The chest opened with a soft creak, revealing a leather-bound diary, its pages yellowed but intact. The first entry, dated 1873, was in Eleanor's elegant script. The chamber is complete. None suspect its true purpose. It must remain hidden, lest the truth destroy us all. Miss Marple's breath caught. She turned the pages, scanning cryptic entries, references to the mechanism, the guardian, and a debt unpaid. One passage stood out, underlined twice. The room will vanish when the time comes, only the worthy will find it again. The final entry, dated 1890, was scrawled in haste. They know. I hear them in the walls. The chamber must be sealed tonight. Miss Marple closed the diary, her mind racing. Eleanor had built the chamber with intent, a secret so potent it demanded concealment. But who were they? And why now, over a century later, had the room vanished? Footsteps thudded below, followed by raised voices. Tucking the diary under her shawl, Miss Marple descended to the drawing-room, where the guests were gathered, their faces taut. Mrs. Hattie stood in the doorway, wringing her hands. "What's all this commotion?" Miss Marple asked, her voice calm but commanding. "It's Mr. Quill," Hattie said, her voice trembling. "He's been poking about the West Wing, ma'am. Says he's researching for his book, but I caught him tapping the walls." Quentin Quill stood defiant, his notebook clutched to his chest. "I'm a writer, Miss Marple. Curiosity is my trade. This house is a goldmine of intrigue." "Intrigue or interference?" Evelyn Cresswell said sharply, her green eyes narrowing. "You've been skulking since you arrived. What are you really after?" "Oh, come now," Harold Vane interjected, his moustache twitching. "Let's not turn this into a melodrama. Quill's just a scribbler with an overactive imagination." "Clara," Vane said nothing, her gaze fixed on the floor, but her fingers twisted her wedding ring furiously. Miss Marple stepped forward, her eyes locking on Quill. "Mr. Quill, did you find anything noteworthy in the West Wing?" Quill hesitated, then smirked. "Just dust and echoes. But I'll tell you this, that corridor feels wrong, like it's watching you." A chill rippled through the room. Evelyn laughed, a brittle sound. "Really, Mr. Quill, you should stick to fiction." Miss Marple's smile was faint. "Fiction often mirrors truth, Miss Cresswell, and truth has a way of surfacing." As the guests dispersed, Miss Marple lingered, the diary's weight pressing against her. Eleanor's words echoed in her mind. Only the worthy will find it again. The chamber's disappearance was no accident. It was a test, a riddle, and someone in Marple Manor was playing a dangerous game to solve it. Chapter 5. Shadows of the Past the evening draped Marple Manor in a hush, the kind that amplified every creak and sigh of the old house. Miss Marple sat by her bedroom window, the locked diary open on her lap, its pages bathed in lamplight. Eleanor Marple's words painted a vivid picture, one that reached beyond the vanished chamber, to a history steeped in ambition and fear. To understand the present, Miss Marple knew she must first walk in her great-aunt's shadow. She turned to an entry from 1872, written in Eleanor's meticulous hand. The architect, Mr. Grayson, is a genius. Though his eyes hold a hunger I mistrust. He speaks of the chamber as a safeguard. But I wonder if it is my family he means to protect, or something else. The mechanism is nearly complete. I pray I have not built my own cage. Miss Marple's fingers paused on the page. Grayson. The name stirred a memory. Village gossip about a reclusive architect who'd vanished after the manor's completion. She closed her eyes, letting her mind drift to St. Mary Mead in the 1870s, a time of gas lamps and whispered scandals. Eleanor Marple stood in the half-built west wing, her skirts brushing the sawdust-strewn floor. The air smelled of fresh plaster and secrets. Before her, Mr. Grayson, a wiry man with a hawkish face, unrolled a blueprint. His fingers, stained with ink, pointed to a chamber marked in red. "This room," Grayson said, his voice low, "will be your legacy, Miss Marple. A vault for what must never be found. The mechanism will ensure it." Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "And who decides when it vanishes, Mr. Grayson?" "You." He smiled. "A thin, cold thing. The house decides. It always does." She turned away, her heart uneasy. Behind her, workers hammered, their blows echoing like a warning. Miss Marple opened, her eyes the vision fading. The diary hinted at a purpose for the chamber. A vault, perhaps, for something precious or perilous. But Grayson's role troubled her. Had he betrayed Eleanor, or had the house itself turned against her? A soft knock broke her reverie. "Mrs." Hattie stood at the door, her face drawn. "Mum, I hate to bother you, but I found something. In the cellar, behind the wine racks." Miss Marple rose, slipping the diary into her dresser. "Show me, Hattie." The cellar was damp and dim, its stone walls slick with age. Hattie led her to a corner where a loose brick had been pried away, revealing a small cavity. Inside was a folded letter, its wax seal cracked but bearing the initials E.M. Miss Marple unfolded it carefully, her eyes scanning the faded ink. "If you find this, the chamber has vanished as I feared. Grayson cannot be trusted. The Guardian watches, but its loyalty is not to us. Seek the rose window. It sees what we cannot." The letter was unsigned, but the handwriting matched Eleanor's. Miss Marple's mind whirred. The rose window was in the manor's chapel, a stained-glass relic rarely visited. And the Guardian? A person, a mechanism, or something stranger? "Hattie," Miss Marple said, folding the letter, "you've done well. Tell no one of this." Hattie nodded, her eyes wide. "Ma'am, this house, it's not right. I feel it watching." Miss Marple patted her arm. "Houses don't watch, Hattie, but people do." Back in her room, Miss Marple pondered the letter's clues. The rose window was her next step, but the guest's behaviour gnawed at her. Quill's wall-tapping, Clara's fear, Evelyn's evasiveness, Harold's forced cheer, each was a thread in a tangled web, and now Grayson's shadow loomed, a ghost from a century past. A faint noise, a soft scrape, came from the corridor. Miss Marple froze, her hand on the lamp. The sound stopped, but the air felt heavy, as if the manor itself held its breath. She opened her door, peering into the dark. Nothing. Yet as she closed it, a single petal, red as blood, lay on the threshold. She picked it up, her lips tightening. "The rose," she whispered. "It's calling." Chapter 6. The Midnight Séance. The clock in Marple Manor's drawing-room struck 11, its chimes heavy in the stillness. Miss Marple sat by the fire, the red rose petal tucked in her pocket, its presence a quiet challenge. The letter's mention of the rose window gnawed at her, but another opportunity had arisen, an ill-advised one perhaps, but too tempting to ignore. Evelyn Cresswell, with her London flair, had proposed a séance to commune with the manor's spirits. Miss Marple had agreed, not for ghosts, but for what the living might reveal under pressure. The guests gathered in the library, a cavernous room lined with dusty tomes. A round table stood at the centre, draped in black cloth, a single candle flickering. Evelyn sat with an air of theatrical command, her emerald earrings glinting. Quentin Quill slouched beside her, his notebook open, pen poised. Harold and Clara Vane sat stiffly, Harold's moustache twitching, Clara's hands knotted in her lap. Miss Marple took her place last, her eyes scanning each face. "Let's not waste time," Evelyn said, her voice crisp. "We'll contact Eleanor Marple, the manor's first mistress. If anyone knows its secrets, it's her." She glanced at Miss Marple, as if expecting protest. Miss Marple smiled faintly. "A fine idea, Miss Cresswell. I'm curious to hear what, or who, responds." Evelyn lit incense, its musky scent curling through the air. "Join hands," she instructed. Reluctantly, the circle formed, Clara's grip on Miss Marple's hand trembling. Evelyn closed her eyes, her voice dropping to a low chant. "Eleanor Marple, we call you. Speak to us. Reveal the manor's truth." The candle flickered, though no draught stirred the room. Harold snorted softly, but Quill's pen scratched furiously. Miss Marple watched, her senses sharp. Then a sound, a faint rhythmic tapping, came from the walls like fingers drumming on wood. Clara gasped, her hand tightening. "What's that?" "Quiet," Evelyn hissed, her eyes still closed. "She's here." The tapping grew louder, insistent, then stopped. A low moan echoed, not from the table, but from the walls themselves, as if the manor groaned in pain. Harold's bravado faltered, his face paling. Quill's pen froze, ink blotting his page. "Eleanor?" Evelyn intoned. "Why does the chamber vanish?" The candle flared, its flame stretching impossibly tall. Then a voice, thin, fractured, neither male nor female, whispered from nowhere. "The debt must be paid." Clara screamed, yanking her hands free. The circle broke, and the candle snuffed out, plunging the room into darkness. Footsteps shuffled, someone cursed, and Miss Marple felt a rush of air as if someone brushed past her. She remained still, her mind cataloguing every sound, every reaction. "Light, someone!" Harold barked. Quill struck a match, its glow revealing wide eyes and flushed faces. Evelyn's poise was gone, her hands shaking as she relit the candle. "Enough of this nonsense," Harold snapped, standing. "It's a trick, all of it." "Was it?" Quill said, his voice low. "That voice, it wasn't human." Miss Marple's gaze flicked to Evelyn, who avoided her eyes. "Miss Cresswell, you've conducted séances before, I presume?" Evelyn hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, but nothing like this. That voice wasn't planned." Clara sobbed quietly, her face buried in her hands. "It's the house. It's cursed. Nonsense," Miss Marple said, her tone brisk but kind. "Houses don't speak, Mrs. Vane, but mechanisms might. Or people." She rose, smoothing her skirt. "I suggest we all retire. The night has been eventful." As the guests dispersed, Miss Marple lingered, her fingers brushing the petal in her pocket. The voice, the tapping, staged perhaps, but not entirely. The manor was alive with secrets, and the séance had rattled someone's cage. She glanced at the library's far wall, where a faint outline caught her eye. A seam, barely visible, shaped like a door. "Tomorrow," she whispered, "the rose window, and you, my dear manor, will start talking." Chapter 7. The Architect's Riddle. The morning sun pierced the mist over St. Mary Mead, casting a golden glow through the manor's chapel. Miss Marple stood before the rose window, its stained glass, a kaleidoscope of reds, blues, and golds. The letter's words echoed in her mind. "Seek the rose window. It sees what we cannot." The séance had been a spectacle, but its whispers and theatrics only deepened the mystery. Now the window promised clarity, or another layer of the manor's enigma. The chapel was small, its pews worn smooth by time, its air heavy with the scent of old wood and wax. Miss Marple traced the window's leaded panes, her fingers lingering. On a central panel, a rose in full bloom, its petals etched with faint, swirling lines. She squinted, her magnifying glass revealing the lines as words, carved in a script so tiny it seemed meant to be missed. "Grayson's will binds the heart." "Grayson again," she murmured. The architect's shadow loomed larger with each clue. The diary had painted him as untrustworthy. The letter had warned against him. And now his name was etched into the manor's heart. But what was his will? Footsteps echoed behind her. She turned to see Quentin Quill, his notebook tucked under his arm, his sharp eyes scanning the chapel. "Miss Marple," he said, his tone too casual, "an odd place for a morning stroll." "She might say the same of you, Mr. Quill," she replied, her smile polite but probing. "The chapel isn't on your usual route." He shrugged, stepping closer to the window. "Inspiration strikes in strange places. This window's a beauty. Almost secretive." His fingers brushed the rose panel, pausing where the inscription lay. Miss Marple's gaze sharpened. Secretive indeed. Have you found anything in your research that might explain the manor's quirks? Quill's smirk flickered. Only rumours. Old tales of a room that moves built by a mad architect. Sounds like my kind of story. He met her eyes, his expression unreadable. You've been poking around too, haven't you? Oh, I poke where I must, Miss Marple said lightly. Old houses reward the curious, if they're careful. Quill chuckled, but his eyes lingered on the window before he sauntered out. Miss Marple watched him go, her mind turning. Quill knew more than he let on, or he was fishing for what she knew. Either way, he was a piece of the puzzle. Returning to the window, she pressed the rose panel gently. A soft click sounded, and a small compartment slid open in the wall beside the window, revealing a rolled parchment. Her heart quickened as she unrolled it, a blueprint of the West Wing, signed by Grayson himself. The chamber was marked, its walls annotated with strange symbols, gears, levers, and a cryptic note. The heart turns, the debt burns. The blueprint showed a network of hidden passages, one leading from the vanished chamber to a central hub beneath the manor. Miss Marple traced the lines, her mind piecing together Grayson's design. The chamber wasn't just hidden, it was movable, its walls tied to a mechanism that could shift its place in the manor's layout. But why? And what was the debt that haunted Eleanor's writings and the séance's eerie voice? A sudden noise, a sharp clatter, came from the chapel door. Miss Marple tucked the blueprint into her shawl and turned, but no one was there. The air felt heavy, as if the manor itself watched her. She stepped outside, her eyes catching a glint on the floor. A small brass gear, its edges worn but freshly polished. She picked it up, her lips tightening. Grayson's will, she whispered, and someone still turning it. Back in her room, Miss Marple spread the blueprint on her desk, the gear beside it. The rose window had given her a map, but the riddle was far from solved. Grayson had built a machine within the manor, one that hid the chamber for a purpose tied to a century-old debt. And someone, Quill, Clara, Evelyn, or another, knew how to make it dance. Chapter 8. Betrayal at Dawn. The first light of dawn crept through Marple Manor's windows, painting the corridors in soft greys. Miss Marple had not slept. The blueprint spread across her desk had kept her awake, its lines and symbols a map to a truth she was close to grasping. The brass gear, glinting beside it, was a tangible piece of Grayson's mechanism, a clue that someone had been careless enough to drop. But carelessness, Miss Marple knew, often followed desperation. She dressed quietly and slipped into the West Wing. The blueprint folded in her pocket. The blank wall stood as defiant as ever, but the blueprint had marked a hidden panel nearby, disguised as a decorative moulding. She was reaching for it when a shadow moved at the corridor's end. "Who's there?" she called, her voice steady but sharp. A figure froze, then stepped into the dim light. Mrs. Hattie, her face ashen, a small crowbar clutched in her trembling hands. "Miss Marple, I didn't mean to startle you." Miss Marple's eyes narrowed, though her tone remained kind. "Hattie, what are you doing here at this hour with a crowbar, no less?" Hattie's gaze darted to the wall, then back to Miss Marple. I was checking the panelling, ma'am. Thought I heard a noise last night, like scraping. I didn't want to worry you." Miss Marple stepped closer, her eyes on the crowbar. "Scraping, you say? And you thought to investigate, alone with a tool meant for prying?" Hattie's shoulders slumped, the crowbar slipping from her hands with a dull clank. "Oh, ma'am, I'm sorry. I didn't know what else to do. I saw someone here last night, Mr. Quill. I swear it was him tampering with the wall. I thought I could find out what he was after." Miss Marple's expression softened, but her mind was alert. Hattie's story was plausible, yet her presence here, armed and secretive, suggested more than loyalty. "Hattie, you should have come to me. Tell me exactly what you saw." Hattie swallowed, her voice low. "It was past midnight. I couldn't sleep after that séance nonsense. I heard footsteps and followed them here. Mr. Quill was kneeling by that moulding, muttering about finding the heart. He had a tool, looked like a wrench. I hid before he saw me." Miss Marple nodded, filing the detail away. "And you decided to take matters into your own hands?" "I was afraid, ma'am," Hattie whispered. "This house, it's not right, and Mr. Quill's been too nosy. I thought if I could find what he was after, I could protect you." Miss Marple patted Hattie's arm, her touch reassuring, but her eyes searching. "You've always been loyal, Hattie. But no more secrets. Go back to your duties and say nothing of this." Hattie nodded, tears brimming, and hurried away. Miss Marple waited until her footsteps faded, then turned to the moulding. She pressed it as the blueprint indicated, and a small panel clicked open, revealing a narrow slot with a single lever inside. She hesitated. Pulling it might trigger the mechanism, but it might also alert whoever was watching. Instead, she closed the panel and stepped back, her mind racing. Hattie's story pointed to Quill, but her own actions raised questions. Was she protecting the manor, or hiding her own role? And Quill's muttering about the heart echoed the blueprint's cryptic note. The heart turns, the debt burns. At breakfast, the guests were subdued, the air thick with unspoken suspicions. Quill's eyes were bloodshot, his notebook absent, for once. Clara Vane barely touched her food, her gaze flickering to the door. Evelyn Cresswell sipped her coffee with forced calm, while Harold Vane's hearty laugh rang hollow. Miss Marple broke the silence. "Mr. Quill, you look tired. Did you sleep poorly?" Quill's fork paused. "Bad dreams, Miss Marple. This house has a way of getting under your skin." "Indeed," she said, her smile faint. "Some say it whispers secrets to those who listen." Quill's eyes met hers, a flicker of unease in them. Evelyn coughed delicately, changing the subject, but Miss Marple's focus remained on Quill. Hattie's betrayal, or was it loyalty, had shifted the game. Someone was tampering with Grayson's mechanism, and the heart of the manor was closer than ever. Chapter 9. The Hidden Mechanism. Afternoon sun cast dappled shadows through Marple Manor's windows, but the west wing remained cloaked in gloom. Miss Marple stood before the blank wall, the blueprint secrets burning in her mind. The lever hidden behind the moulding was a key, she was certain. But to what? Grayson's mechanism was no mere architectural quirk. It was a machine with a purpose, and she was determined to uncover it. She glanced down the corridor, ensuring she was alone, then pressed the moulding again. The panel clicked open, revealing the lever, its iron cold under her fingers. She hesitated, weighing the risk. Pulling it might reveal the chamber, or spring a trap. But time was slipping away, and the manor's whispers were growing impatient. With a steady hand, she pulled the lever. A low rumble vibrated through the floor, like the growl of a waking beast. The wall shuddered, dust cascading from its seams, and a section of plaster slid aside with a groan, revealing a narrow passage. The air within was stale, tinged with the metallic scent of oil and age. Miss Marple stepped inside, her flashlight beam cutting through the dark. The passage was cramped, its walls lined with gears and pulleys, their surfaces gleaming as if recently tended. She followed the path, her steps cautious, until it opened into a small chamber, a hub, just as the blueprint had shown. At its centre stood a complex mechanism, a lattice of brass and steel, with a large heart-shaped cog at its core. The cog pulsed faintly, as if alive, its rhythm matching the hum she'd heard days before. "Grayson's heart," she whispered, her eyes tracing the machinery. The blueprint's note, "the heart turns, the debt burns," suddenly made sense. This was the manor's secret engine, designed to move the chamber, to hide it from the world. But why? A faint inscription on the heart cog caught her eye. "For E.M., the debt binds us." Eleanor Marple's initials, tied again to a mysterious debt. Miss Marple's mind raced. Had Eleanor commissioned this mechanism to protect something, or to atone for it? A sudden clank echoed behind her, and she spun, her flashlight illuminating a figure in the passage. Clara Vane stood frozen, her eyes wide with terror, a small wrench in her hand. "Miss Marple, I didn't mean to." "Mrs. Vane," Miss Marple said, her voice calm but firm. "You seem to have a habit of appearing where secrets hide. Explain yourself." Clara's hands trembled, the wrench clattering to the floor. "I followed you. I had to know. Harold's been acting. Strange, sneaking out at night. I thought he was part of this madness. I found this wrench in his things, marked with Grayson's initials." Miss Marple's gaze softened, though her suspicion lingered. "And you thought to investigate alone, or to sabotage what you found?" "No!" Clara's voice broke. I just wanted answers. Harold's been obsessed with the manor's history, talking about a treasure hidden here. I thought he'd gone mad." Miss Marple stepped closer, her flashlight steady. "Treasure, you say? And what does Mr. Vane believe this treasure to be?" Clara shook her head, tears spilling. "He won't tell me. Only that it's worth everything, and that the chamber holds the key." Miss Marple nodded, her mind cataloguing Clara's words. Harold's obsession, Quill's tampering, Hattie's crowbar, each pointed to the mechanism, to the heart cog that turned the manor's secrets. But Clara's fear seemed genuine, her betrayal born of desperation rather than deceit. "Go back to your room, Mrs. Vane," Miss Marple said gently, "and speak of this to no one, not even your husband." Clara nodded, fleeing the passage. Miss Marple turned back to the mechanism, her fingers brushing the heart cog. It was warm, its pulse steady. She didn't dare tamper with it, not yet. But the chamber's purpose was clearer now. A vault, a prison, or perhaps both, tied to a debt that still demanded payment. As she retraced her steps, the manor seemed to watch her, its walls closing in. Someone else knew of the mechanism, and they were closer to the truth than she'd feared. The heart was turning, and Miss Marple had to find the chamber before it burned. Chapter 10. The Stranger's Confession. The evening settled over Marple Manor like a heavy cloak, the air thick with the promise of rain. Miss Marple sat in the parlour, the heart-cog's pulse still echoing in her mind. The mechanism was the key, but its purpose, tied to Eleanor's debt and Grayson's will, remained elusive. Clara's revelation about Harold's treasure hunt had added a new thread, but the web was growing tangled. She needed a break in the pattern, and it came sooner than expected. A knock at the front door startled Mrs. Hattie, who bustled to answer it. Moments later, she ushered in a stranger, a man in his 40s, lean and weathered, with greying hair and eyes that held a quiet intensity. His coat was damp, his boots muddied, as if he'd walked miles to reach St. Mary Mead. "Miss Marple," Hattie said, her voice uneasy. "This is Mr. Thomas Grayson. He says he's here about family matters." Miss Marple's heart quickened, though her expression remained serene. "Grayson, you say? How intriguing! Please, Mr. Grayson, sit. Tea?" The man shook his head, his gaze fixed on her. "No tea, thank you. I've come because of the chamber. I know it's gone." The room seemed to still. Hattie gasped, but Miss Marple waved her away. "Leave us, Hattie. Close the door." Once alone, Miss Marple leaned forward, her eyes sharp. "You're remarkably well-informed, Mr. Grayson. A relative of the architect, I presume?" He nodded, his hands clasped tightly. "His great-grandson. My family's carried his secrets for generations. I heard rumours the chamber had vanished again, and I knew I had to come. It's my duty. Again?" Miss Marple's voice was soft, but her mind seized the word. "Explain, Mr. Grayson." He took a deep breath. his voice low. "My great-grandfather, Elias Grayson, built the chamber for Eleanor Marple, but not as a study. It was a vault for a relic, something ancient and dangerous. Eleanor called it the debt, a burden her family had guarded for centuries. Grayson's mechanism was meant to hide it, to move the chamber if the relic was threatened." Miss Marple's fingers tightened on her chair. "And this relic, what is it?" Thomas hesitated, his eyes haunted. "I don't know its true nature, only that it's tied to a pact, a debt to something, not human. Grayson's notes called it the Guardian's price. He betrayed Eleanor, tried to steal it for himself. That's why she sealed the chamber, and why he disappeared." Miss Marple's mind raced, connecting the diary, the blueprint, the séance's eerie voice. "And you believe the chamber's vanished because someone's after this relic?" Thomas nodded. "It's happened before, in 1890, when Grayson's son tried to find it. The mechanism moves the chamber to protect the relic, but it's not foolproof. Someone in this house knows how to trigger it." "Who?" Miss Marple asked, her tone sharp. "I don't know," Thomas admitted. "But they're close. I felt it when I arrived. The house is awake, watching. The relic's power draws people, twists them. You've seen it in your guests, haven't you?" Miss Marple thought of Quill's obsession, Clara's fear, Harold's greed, Evelyn's evasions. "I've seen indications. But why come now, Mr. Grayson? What do you want?" He leaned forward, his voice urgent. "To help you stop them. If the relic's taken, the debt will come due. And it won't just be this house that pays." A chill ran through her, but Miss Marple's resolve hardened. "Very well, Mr. Grayson. Stay the night. But know this. I trust facts, not feelings. If you're hiding anything, I'll find it." He nodded, relief flickering in his eyes. "Fair enough. I'll tell you all I know. But be careful, Miss Marple. The Guardian's watching, and it doesn't care who it claims." As Thomas left for a guest room, Miss Marple sat back, the weight of his words settling. A relic, a pact, a guardian. Fanciful, perhaps, but the mechanism was real, and so was the danger. Someone in Marple Manor was hunting the chamber, and Thomas Grayson's arrival was no coincidence. The truth was close, but so was the risk. Chapter 11. The Final Clue. The morning sky over St. Mary Mead was bruised with clouds, casting Marple Manor in a restless half-light. Miss Marple stood in the library, her fingers brushing the faint outline of the door-shaped seam she'd noticed after the séance. Thomas Grayson's confession had lit a fire in her mind. A relic, a debt, a guardian. The chamber's disappearance was no mere trick. It was a defense, orchestrated by Grayson's mechanism to protect something ancient and perilous. But the final piece of the puzzle eluded her, and time was running short. She returned to her room, spreading the blueprint, Eleanor's diary, and the letter across her desk, the heart cog, the rose window, the guardian's price. Each clue pointed to the chamber, but none revealed how to find it. Her eyes fell on the brass gear she'd found in the chapel, its edges worn but polished. She turned it over, noticing a faint scratch on its surface, barely visible. Holding it under her magnifying glass, she saw it wasn't a scratch, but an inscription. "Tunes, 12, she murmured. "A number, a marker." Her gaze flicked to the blueprint, where the central hub was marked with a clock-like diagram, its 12 points radiating from the heart cog. One point, labelled Thurin's, aligned with a passage she hadn't explored, a tunnel leading to the manor's foundation. Miss Marple's pulse quickened. The gear was a key, not to the mechanism itself, but to its destination. The chamber hadn't vanished. It had moved, hidden in a place only the blueprint and the gear could reveal. She tucked the gear into her pocket and headed for the cellar, where the blueprint indicated an access point to the foundation. As she descended, the air grew damp and cold, the cellar's stone walls pressing close. She found the wine rack Hattie had mentioned, its loose brick concealing the letter. Behind it, a rusted grate covered a narrow tunnel. She pried it open, her flashlight revealing a passage sloping downward, its walls etched with Graysons, symbols, roses, gears, and eyes. The tunnel ended at a circular chamber, its ceiling low, its walls bare, except for a single slot at the centre, sized perfectly for the brass gear. Miss Marple hesitated, her instincts warning of a trap. But the gear's inscription was clear, and the manor's secrets were converging. She inserted the gear and turned it. A deep groan echoed, and the floor shuddered. Dust rained from above as a section of the wall slid open, revealing a staircase descending into darkness. The air that rushed out was warm, tinged with a faint, acrid scent, like burnt roses. Miss Marple's heart pounded, but her resolve held. The chamber was near, and with it the truth. Before she could descend, a voice cut through the silence. "Miss Marple, you're too clever for your own good." She turned, her flashlight illuminating Evelyn Cresswell, her emerald earrings glinting in the gloom. In her hand was a small pistol, its barrel steady. Her poised facade was gone, replaced by a cold, calculating stare. "Miss Cresswell," Miss Marple said, her voice calm, "I suspected you were more than a curious guest. Care to explain?" Evelyn's lips curled. "You've found the chamber, or close to it. I can't let you open it. The relic inside, it's mine. My family's been searching for it since Eleanor hid it. Grayson's notes led me here, but you've been a nuisance." Miss Marple's eyes flicked to the pistol, then back to Evelyn. "Your family? Another Grayson, perhaps?" Evelyn laughed, sharp and bitter. "No, my maiden name is Marple. Eleanor was my great-great-aunt. The relic's our birthright, a power she was too weak to claim. I've studied the mechanism, the clues. The séance was my test, to see if the Guardian would speak. And it did." Miss Marple's mind raced, slotting Evelyn's revelation into place. "And the debt? What price are you willing to pay?" Evelyn's grip tightened on the pistol. "Whatever it takes. Step away from the staircase, or I'll ensure you never see the chamber." Miss Marple's fingers brushed the gear in her pocket, her mind calculating. Evelyn was desperate, but desperation bred mistakes. The final clue had led her here, but the chamber's secrets and its guardian were still waiting. Chapter 12. The room reappears. The cellar's darkness pressed against Miss Marple, the air thick with the scent of burnt roses and Evelyn Cresswell's barely contained fury. The pistol in Evelyn's hand gleamed faintly, its threat as real as the open staircase behind Miss Marple, descending to the chamber's hiding place. Evelyn's revelation that she was a Marple, driven by a century-old claim to a mysterious relic, had turned the puzzle's final piece. But Miss Marple knew the game wasn't over. The chamber and its guardian held secrets even Evelyn might not expect. "Step away, Miss Marple," Evelyn repeated, her voice taut. "You don't understand what's at stake." Miss Marple's eyes held Evelyn's, calm but unyielding. "I understand more than you think, Miss Cresswell. A relic, a debt, a guardian. Eleanor's legacy is no treasure. It's a burden, and you're not the only one drawn to it." Evelyn's lips twitched, but before she could respond, a deep rumble shook the cellar. The walls groaned and the staircase pulsed with a faint crimson light from below. Iceni's eyes widened, her pistol wavering. "It's moving," she whispered. "The chamber. It's coming back." Miss Marple seized the moment, stepping sideways to shield herself behind a stone pillar. "Careful, Miss Cresswell. You've woken something. Are you prepared for it?" The rumble grew louder, and the staircase seemed to shift, its steps realigning, as if guided by an unseen hand. Dust rained from the ceiling, and a gust of warm air surged upward, carrying a sound, a low, rhythmic chant, not human, yet alive with intent. Evelyn's bravado faltered, her face paling as she backed toward the tunnel's entrance. "Don't move," Miss Marple said sharply. "Whatever's down there, you've called it. Running won't help." Evelyn's gaze darted between the staircase and Miss Marple, her pistol trembling. "I studied Grayson's notes. I know the mechanism. The relic's mine." "Then why do you look so afraid?" Miss Marple asked, her voice cutting through the chant's eerie cadence. The rumbling stopped abruptly, and a heavy silence fell. Then, with a grinding screech, the wall at the cellar's far end split open, revealing a familiar oak door. Miss Marple's study, the vanished chamber, now impossibly here, its frame glowing faintly red. The door creaked open, and a wave of heat rolled out, tinged with the acrid scent of ash. Miss Marple's heart pounded, but her mind stayed sharp. The chamber had reappeared, but not by her hand. The mechanism, the heart cog, had responded, to Evelyn's meddling, or to the guardian's will. She stepped toward the door, ignoring Evelyn's hissed warning. "Stay back!" Evelyn snapped, raising the pistol. But her eyes were on the chamber, drawn to the flickering light within. Miss Marple paused at the threshold, peering inside. Her study was as she remembered. Her desk, her armchair, the window overlooking the rose garden. But the air was wrong, heavy with a presence that pressed against her skin. At the room's centre stood a pedestal, and on it a small obsidian orb, its surface swirling with veins of red light. The relic. It's beautiful. Evelyn breathed, stepping closer, her pistol lowering. It's power. My family's right. Miss Marple's voice was low, urgent. Evelyn, listen. That's no treasure. Eleanor sealed it for a reason. The debt. Her words were cut off by a sudden piercing wail from the orb. The room shook, and the red light flared, casting shadows that twisted like living things. Evelyn screamed, dropping the pistol as she clutched her head. Miss Marple staggered but held her ground, her eyes fixed on the orb. The chant returned louder, its words unintelligible but heavy with demand. Pay. The debt. The shadows coalesced, forming a figure, tall, indistinct, its eyes burning red. The Guardian. It turned toward Evelyn, who fell to her knees whimpering. Miss Marple's mind raced. The relic was a trap, its power a lure for the greedy. Eleanor had known, and Grayson had built the chamber to contain it. But someone had to end this. Evelyn, Miss Marple said, her voice steady despite the chaos, you can stop this. Reject it. The relic feeds on desire. Evelyn's eyes were wild, but she shook her head. No! It's mine! The Guardian's form solidified, reaching for her. Miss Marple acted on instinct, grabbing a brass candlestick from the desk and smashing it against the orb. The relic cracked, its light erupting in a blinding flash. The wail became a scream, and the Guardian dissolved, its shadows collapsing into dust. The chamber shook violently, then stilled. When the light faded, the orb was dull, its surface lifeless. Evelyn lay crumpled, sobbing, the pistol forgotten. The chamber was just a room. Again its air cool, its presence gone. Miss Marple knelt beside Evelyn, her voice gentle. It's over, Miss Cresswell. The debt is paid. But as she helped Evelyn to her feet, a faint hum stirred in the walls, barely audible. Miss Marple's lips tightened. The Guardian was gone, but the mechanism remained, and somewhere the heart cog still turned. Chapter 13. The Twist Unravelled. The air in Marple Manor's cellar was still, the chamber's oak door now just a silent witness to the chaos that had unfolded. Miss Marple stood over the shattered remains of the obsidian orb, its red veins dull, its power extinguished. Evelyn Cresswell sat slumped against the wall, her face streaked with tears. The fight drained from her. The Guardian was gone, the relic destroyed. But Miss Marple's instincts told her the story wasn't complete. The faint hum in the walls, the heart cog's pulse, whispered of one final secret. Footsteps echoed in the tunnel, urgent and heavy. Thomas Grayson burst into the chamber, his weathered face taut with alarm. "Miss Marple! I heard the noise! What's happened?" Miss Marple's eyes narrowed, her voice calm but probing. "The chamber returned, Mr. Grayson, and the relic is no more. But I suspect you knew it would come to this." Thomas froze, his gaze flicking to the broken orb, then to Evelyn. "You destroyed it? Then it's over." "Not quite," Miss Marple said, stepping closer. "You told me your family carried Grayson's secrets, but you left out a crucial detail. You weren't here to stop the relic's theft. You were here to ensure its destruction. And you've been guiding me all along." Thomas's shoulders sagged, his intensity giving way to resignation. "You're too sharp, Miss Marple." "Yes, I knew more than I said. My great-grandfather's notes weren't just about the relic. They were about ending it. He betrayed Eleanor, tried to wield the relic's power, and paid with his life. His last wish was for his descendants to break the cycle." Miss Marple's mind pieced together the threads. Thomas's timely arrival, his knowledge of the Guardian, the gear she'd found in the chapel. "You left the gear for me to find, didn't you? Marked with Nodalin to lead me to the chamber's new hiding place." Thomas nodded, his voice low. "I couldn't risk opening the chamber myself. The Guardian would have sensed my intent. But you're different. You see through lies, through greed. I knew you'd find the truth and do what was needed." Evelyn stirred, her voice bitter. "You used us all. My family's birthright ruined." "No," Thomas said, his eyes hard. "Your birthright was a curse. The relic wasn't power, it was a leash. The Guardian served something older, something that demanded a price for every use. Eleanor knew it, and she built the chamber to contain it. My ancestor's mechanism was her fail-safe, but it needed someone like Miss Marple to finish the job." Miss Marple's gaze shifted to the chamber's walls, where the hum had faded but not vanished. "And the mechanism, the heart cog still, turns. What happens now?" Thomas hesitated, then pulled a small key from his pocket, its surface etched with a rose. "This deactivates the heart cog. It's the last of Grayson's designs. I was waiting for the relic to be destroyed before using it. The chamber will stay where it is, a room like any other. The manor will be free." Miss Marple took the key, her fingers brushing its intricate design. "You trust me with this, Mr. Grayson." "You've earned it," he said simply. "But be quick. The others, Quill, the Vanes, they're still sniffing around. They don't know the relic's gone, but they'll cause trouble if they find this place." Miss Marple nodded, her mind already moving to the final act. She turned to Evelyn, who looked broken but defiant. "Miss Cresswell, you have a choice. Help me end this, or face the consequences of your actions. The pistol won't help you now." Evelyn's eyes flickered with resentment, but she nodded. "I'll keep quiet. Just get me out of here." Miss Marple led them back through the tunnel, the key heavy in her hand. In the west wing, she found the hidden panel by the moulding, and inserted the key into a slot she hadn't noticed before. A soft click echoed, and the hum in the walls ceased. The heart cog had stopped. She faced Thomas and Evelyn, her voice firm. "This ends here. The chamber is my study again, nothing more. Mr. Grayson, you'll leave St. Mary Mead by morning. Miss Cresswell, you'll do the same. The others will be told a gas leak caused the disturbances, nothing more." Thomas bowed his head. "Thank you, Miss Marple. My family's debt is paid." Evelyn said nothing, her silence a grudging agreement. As they left, Miss Marple stood alone in the west wing, the chamber's door now just a door. But as she turned away, a single red petal fell from her sleeve, landing on the floor. She stared at it, her lips tightening. The guardian was gone, the relic destroyed, but Marple Manor would always hold its secrets, and Miss Marple, as always, would be watching. Chapter 14. The Village Restored. The sun rose over St. Mary Mead, its golden light washing away the shadows that had clung to Marple Manor. The air was crisp, the village stirring with its usual rhythm, carts rattling, children laughing, the church bell tolling softly. Inside the manor, Miss Marple sat in her study, the chamber now firmly in its rightful place, its oak door unremarkable once more. Her desk was tidy, her armchair inviting, and the window framed the rose garden in serene bloom. Yet the memory of the heart cog, the relic, and the guardian lingered, a quiet echo in the walls. The guests were gone. Evelyn Cresswell had left at dawn, her bags packed, her defiance muted by the weight of her failure. Thomas Grayson followed, his weathered face relieved but solemn, his family's century-long burden lifted. The Vanes departed with polite excuses, Harold's bluster subdued, Clara's nervous glances replaced by quiet relief. Quentin Quill was the last to go, his notebook filled with half-truths he'd never fully unravel, his smirk tempered by a wary respect for Miss Marple's sharpness. She'd spun a simple tale for them, a gas leak in the west wing, causing strange noises and confusion, now safely resolved. The village accepted it as villages do, eager to return to normalcy. Mrs. Hattie, loyal but shaken, had been sworn to silence, her crowbar incident forgiven as a moment of misguided zeal. St. Mary Mead was at peace, its secrets buried once more. Miss Marple sipped her tea, her eyes on the rose garden. The red petal she'd found after deactivating the heart cog lay pressed in her diary, a reminder of the manor's hidden pulse. The relic was gone, its guardian silenced, but the mechanism, Grayson's intricate legacy, remained dormant within. The walls, she'd chosen not to destroy it, not out of sentiment, but pragmatism. Old houses held old promises, and Marple Manor might yet need its defences. A knock at the door broke her thoughts. Mrs. Hattie entered, a tray of scones in hand. "Ma'am, the village is buzzing about the gas leak. They're calling you a hero for sorting it out." Miss Marple's lips twitched almost a smile. "Heroes are for stories, Hattie. I merely tidied a mess." Hattie hesitated, then lowered her voice. "Ma'am, that room, it's really over, isn't it? No more vanishing?" Miss Marple set her teacup down, her gaze steady. "The room is where it belongs, Hattie. As for vanishing, I suspect this house will always have its tricks. But we're equal to them, aren't we?" Hattie nodded, a spark of her old warmth returning. "That we are, ma'am." As Hattie left, Miss Marple rose and walked to the window, her fingers brushing the diary on her desk. The village was restored, its heart beating steadily. But she thought of Eleanor Marple, who'd built this manor to guard a dangerous secret, and of Grayson, whose ambition had woven a web of gears and debts. Their choices had shaped the present, just as hers had shaped this resolution. She looked out at the roses, their petals vivid against the green. Human nature, she mused, was like those flowers, beautiful, resilient, but prone to thorns. The relic had drawn out greed, fear, and loyalty in equal measure, and she'd seen it all before, in countless faces, countless mysteries. The chamber's vanishing was extraordinary, but the motives behind it were as old as time. "Another puzzle solved," she said softly, her eyes glinting. "But there's always another waiting." She turned back to her desk, picking up her knitting. The manor was quiet, the village content, and Miss Marple, ever watchful, was ready for whatever Secret St. Mary Mead might whisper next.